Hello everyone, hello everybody, this is Blue Masters of Solstice, and I was right. I was right. I was looking at it. I was right. First week of Elden Ring, I was right. A quick me from the future. I did actually watch all of this. So, whatever you're about to hear after this point, yeah, whatever's wrong, just accept that it's probably wrong. But I do think there is certain room for scrutiny. Like, he says one thing, like it's a separate universe or whatever, but I don't know how true that is. That is something that is a very fickle thing to take as truth or false. So, yeah. Otherwise, I do think this is still going to be, like, really cool. There is definitely room for possible, like, lore implications still. I am very excited still to check this out. Like, the actual game. Like, regardless, I do think it is still a very good, concept for PvE. Especially. Now, I'm just gonna leave this conversation right there. If you want to already know more, you can, check this video that I'm looking at by PC Gamer. I don't think that anywhere else on this topic is okay for me to really discuss if you don't want the spoilers. So, yeah, just seek that out yourself. But this is about Elden Ring Nightreign. And I am so excited for this, and I'm also shocked. But let's kind of go into some detail. Right off the bat, we see some interesting stuff. The sky is all kinds of crazy colors right now, most mainly blue. But we better understand where the sun is. I don't exactly see the Erdtree right now, or at least I haven't yet. We do see the moon though. And we see these colossal shadows that look like people just towering over everything. And what's most likely still the lands between somehow, but very different. But, it's not clear where some of this is, but, there is a few things we will see that are kind of familiar, but in this case scenario, this is kind of not familiar. I've never seen this kind of weird formations. As for what kind of formations those could possibly be, well, that's a little debatable. But we see there's still some kind of semblance of reasons still for someone to be like hung or whatever. But if this was base lands between, something we can usually trust is the bridges to some degree. And there is only like a few like bridges of that sort that did exist in general in the lands between that we ever seen. And funnily enough, all of them were in Limgrave. So it's like, huh, which part of Limgrave was this? And considering the coloration of half of this, I'm also inclined to think it's like Limgrave or Liurnia or something by that logic. Which makes a fair bit of sense. But at the same time, it's still significantly different. Like none of this is too recognizable. Like I said, this place in general, I've never seen anything that looks like this place. Some of the architecture here is very reminiscent of Limgraves, but we've not seen these formations nor this shape going on here. Like, this is like some upper layer or something, and it looks like you can probably get right on top. We've never seen that. And there's like some scaffolding to get up. Like, what is this? And it's like, there's also some signs of like walls here and that way also. So I want to say there was something here and it got like split. Like, I am honestly just in shock. So I want to say either something like burst through there or the land's split up more. And in which case, it's possible they even built new bridges. That's quite a possibility. Whichever the case, I'm all for finding out what it is exactly. Then we see what appears to be like ghost flame creeping in. More specifically, the putrescent flame. Ghost flame itself is usually about this color. This is still considered like a ghost flame, but it's more so based on putrescence. Otherwise it's like this, if maybe a little greener or something. If you remember the death right birds. This reeks of Limgrave to me. Like, we have the gate front from Stormvale. We have the ruins right at the end of it. We have the ruins there from Farum Azula. But we also have these colossal shadows just overlooking things. One thought I had was that could be something like the Umibozu that were removed from the game, but it could also be like the specters of what was the giants that fell from forever ago, and generations later of smaller giants emerged, of like fire giants to trolls and what else? But the closing in going on here, something I wondered if that's more so the fate of like the night setting in and the removal of the Elden Ring from the lands between. It's something they do kind of mention is something about the Lord of the Night's duties or whatever, in which case it makes enough sense that this could be like the aftermath of that on the lands between. Maybe it caused like a huge rupturing shift in things, in which case it could also mean we are expected to kind of now wrap up the securing, sort of tidying up of the actual lands between.
Daughters of redemption, you were chosen, thrown together by...
And when I saw this, I wasn't sure what to make of it at first, but that could be possibly bestowed to us by Nefeli Lu, actually. That could be such of a Stormhawk that we are enabled the ability to kind of like travel that way. But when I looked at this area, this had me confused by quite a bit. I was like, where could this possibly be? But kind of looking at it, I realized this could be that northern Limgrave part with a few newer structures. Like, it's obviously Limgrave. You see the crucified there of Godric's era. Overall, this kind of bridge style tends to happen only in Limgrave that I've seen so far, or remember. Although it's quite possible I might have like somehow completely ignored an example. But then again, a lot of like the Lands Between itself has been like battered and tattered by wars of the past, so it's possible they just never really properly rebuilt. As for why it's like this, if it's the Lands Between itself, that is a good question. But we do see a lot of these on formations we never seen before, almost like newer types of like rock materials forming on things. And I have some ideas to what could be the cause of that. I do think like maybe like dragons probably caused that. We see there's like some new stuff going on in the Lands Between, but we also see there's still very relevant Everjails, and it looks like we're gonna have keys again for them. And I've seen there's like some blue stuff seeping out of the walls here and there. I don't know what to make of that. But this would appear to be the Lake of Rot region, judging by the coloration. And we see a spider, which is very weird. I don't know what to make of that, but I do know one thing. That is the DS1 Centipede Demon. We have the exiled soldiers. We have like a grappling hook and the soldiers of Godric. This is so Stormvale Castle. This area I also saw had those crucifixions at it. So I'm pretty sure this is like Limgrave or something. It's hard.
Tragedy must be averted.
It's hard to make a lore significance on that topic overall, but people pointed out that this is most likely the DS3 Firekeeper. Because she has the hair color and like the eye mask. Or like mask blindfold thing.
And for that, I need your help.
I don't know what that animation was. That could have been like a revival thing or something weird. But this is the part that drove me the most crazy when I saw this. The fact that we see the nameless king from Dark Souls 3, I flipped out. I was like, my words were incoherent. And then it quickly became, I was right, I was right, I was right, I was right. I was right, week 1 of Elden Ring. I saw this and I thought something was really weird. For context, this is the Lothric Knight banner of Dark Souls 3. But this is an Elden Ring. Let me make it clear how very different these are. Throughout Dark Souls 3, they're much more stretched and squished. And it's kind of harder to make sense of some of the pattern details to some degree. But still very particular. And it's still very much looking like that. If a little bit different. Like, as you can see, there's that there and there inside of a shield. Like a double layer shield, like a trimming around the central bit. We have that here, but it looks significantly different. And they also changed what was underneath it a little bit. And I saw that, I was like, what do you mean by this? Otherwise, a lot of the rest is pretty spot on still. But the decorations are also kind of more modern to meet with Elden Ring style. I pointed this out on like Reddit and such, and people were like, oh, that's just leftover engine asset or whatever. And I'm like, you don't get it. This is actually new. This is like not anywhere in Dark Souls 3's engine. This is actually genuinely new. They, for some reason, thought of having this here, and they shoved it everywhere. We see traces of the Banished Knights being Stormveil Castle. We see them in this one specifically. The screenshot is actually in the Round Table Hold, but in like the real version in Landell. But there is still like another one still in the regular Round Table Hold that is on like the lower floor where you get invaded. Like, I saw these things, I'm like, what? Like, it took me a while to realize they were there in Landell though. Probably like 6 months to a year or so. But eventually I did kind of realize it when it came to the Landell ones. But week 1 of Elden Ring, I noticed the one at the table in Stormveil Castle by Rogier. I was kind of like taking in the little details of this and that, wondering what they all meant, and then I just see this on the table in like brown or whatever, and like colors not used with them in Dark Souls 3. I'm just like confused, like, why is this newer? Why is this here? And I had no idea what to make of that. Over time, I developed all kinds of crazy ideas and theories, like, well, the Banished Knights are like much like the Lothric Knights. For a little more context, the Lothric Knights were basically entrusted with the dragons of Lothric Kingdom. They were essentially the keepers and associates to tend to the dragons and work with them. They were former dragon hunters. And so you were also able to get lightning stuff from Lothar Castle in that regard, where they were from, including like lightning damage from their weapons. And so their weapons like scaled amazingly with lightning, with holy like faith builds and whatnot. So you could do like lightning damage, basic slash blunt, whatever, and you could do like lightning with holy damage if you like holy infuser or something. I forget exactly what it was. It was something of that lines. It was pretty fun, but yeah, it just really confused me when I saw it in Elden Ring like this, and in a much more easier to understand shape. Like, I can see and understand the details. I can see it's a double layer and it has like a pattern on the inside. It's a million times easier to see and understand the exactness of the pattern. And it just completely confused me. And so I had the theory that this has to be somehow related to Dark Souls 3 then. And I like pitched some of the ideas and data I came up with, but nobody really took on to it. But the most annoying thing was like when people dismissed it as the leftover assets thing, and I'm just like, you don't get it. But seeing this, I was right. But I even pointed out like the Faram Azula, like strong similarity to the nature of Faram. His name was Faram, by the way. Like, it's so blatant, and like the scales of dragons are still smithing material. The amount of how straightforward it is so out there. But by the time the DLC came out, I had another kind of like theory in mind that it could be a certain reference to the heroes of old worshipped by like the Horn Scent or whatever. And part of the reason why was Divine Bird. This was literally a storm drake that looked very bird-like. And the Divine Bird also had horns, mind you. Supposedly. Or at least it was often depicted with horns by the Horn Scent. So, Stormlord, possibly the Divine Bird. But here's the real funny catcher I thought of when it came to after doing the DLC stuff. So a theory I came up with a little later, relative of Elden Ring being basically out. In which case, nobody's really researching or coming up with more stuff to Dark Souls. They basically off that with a knife because Elden Ring's new. But there's actually a ton of stuff people completely hard ignored to Dark Souls, I find. A theory I have to this overall, when it comes to the Drake and his relationship to being tamed by the Nameless King, is that it's Ornstein. Let me explain, though. In Dark Souls 3, we find them in the Archdragon Peak, a place of dragon worship. A place of people trying to become dragons. And in the very boss arena, just below where we fight the Nameless King, is simply Ornstein's armor. No body, no soul, the armor. And in the fight against the Nameless King, the Nameless King claimed the soul of the Drake he rode, the Storm Drake, because it's like a custom of his people back in Orlando. And that is like the same kind of thing we would see back in Dark Souls 1 fighting Ornstein and Smough. And in fact, Phase 1 of Nameless King's track is basically the Ornstein and Smough fight track. So there is huge reason to suspect these things. And if you didn't realize, Ornstein is also the Lion Warrior, or Lion Knight of Gwyn. So we have the Divine Bird, we have the Lion. We don't really have a disclosed other divine creature that matched either of them. We just know supposedly the lion was Sirach, and supposedly Godfrey slew or defeated the Divine Bird, the Storm Lord or whatever, that made the Tempest winds so much greater at Stormvale. And supposedly, just before the DS3 fight with the Nameless King, there was a message on the ground that said something about if you proceed, there will be nothing left. And I always thought that was a curious message, and I didn't know what it meant. I had all kinds of theories, but that was just one thing that was just... nothing added up. Although, to be fair, there was quite a few odd little things in Dark Souls that didn't quite add up. Like, how did Ornstein survive his encounter with us? How did Smough survive his encounter with us? Let alone, how did Gwendolyn survive his encounter with us? Like, half of that don't even add up. It's like Dark Souls 1 didn't even happen. So there's definitely a lot to consider in that front of things. But, yeah, I guess it's only a matter of time before we start getting other things to show up and become part of the conversation. And I am very excited about it. But something I didn't think about was... supposedly the storm also kind of in some way features ice. Like, we see the wind and the lightning aspect in this duo fight, but where would the ice part come from? And the only sense of that kind of makes sense to me might have been like, I don't know, maybe like a Pontiff Sullivan relativity. I don't know. In Dark Souls 3 he was seen as like the origins to that, but I don't know, that doesn't exactly have a fullness of sense to it.
Little pillager.
But something you'll see here is that they're deflecting in different kind of block stances.
Bent. Backing the land.
Then they did basically a guard counter, or seemed to have.
Backing the...
But it seems to me like this is like the Volcano Manor or something. Because we see like hot smoldering cinders or
Bent.
we see lava in the distance, and it seems to be like some kind of underground portion maybe.
Backing the land.
Hold on. I've seen some colors that struck my attention. I'm seeing like this bluish purple or something. I'm trying to understand if it's like possibly gravity in some way.
blot away any and all who...
But we see what a lot of people said was probably Lady Maria. I'm not entirely sure of that. I swear the back bit was a little different. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't it like layered or frilled or something in some way, shape, or form? I could be misremembering, but she overall had a weapon that combined together or something. Into like basically the twin blades of Elden Ring. But yeah, I see where a lot of people are particularly interested in exploring this aspect.
Approach.
This is kind of like one of those Elder Inquisitors we've seen in the Shadow of the Erdtree, but it's also kind of like the Dark Souls 3 Grus, if a little different. And I wonder if they're supposed to be oriented towards death or something. But I am like so curious what all this is like about. But it's got to be more closely related to a Gru, I would assume. Especially if you look at it in the face, it has more of like that Gru appearance. I am very curious what this is about, but we see what's probably the bigger size is a smaller size version of what's probably this on the floor here. Then we have what looks to be some kind of Cerberus thing, and if you aren't paying close attention, that's one of the heads doing that. It's swinging around the chain and weapon like Gyobu or something. But I think these are like tentacles or something. This is kind of like Radahn's arena, but I don't know what to make of it. It can only really either be sand or like dust, ash, or whatever. There's not really anything else it can properly be normally. And God knows it's not going to be dust, because that would imply you could get a dust explosion. But this part here reminds me of it really reminds me of Okami a bit. There's this boss in the game Okami, the Nine Tails, who is basically, each tail represents like a part of its soul or whatever, and it can split off into all of them separately, just like attacking the player or whatever as all of them. And you would slowly be like breaking each one down. It would just like be losing more and more tails and stressing each more aspects to itself. And once you get down to like the last one, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it like changed color or whatever. But yeah, it was like a really cool fight in that game. And I feel like that's some part of the inspiration, especially with these dogs using a weapon like this from their back. But it can also be part of like the inspiration of the three wolves or something that we've seen like early game from Ronnie. It's hard to really say, but it very well could be something of that sort. But usually when it comes to these like banners, They used something sort of like those spirit graves we see in the DLC. They're basically signs of tremendous battles have occurred here. Only we don't see it in Caelid, but that could be a thing about Caelid, that it's kind of cursed with scarlet rot and whatnot. Otherwise, we see them in Landel. We see them... Well, actually, technically, we see these in Caelid, Radon's Arena, but not the rest of Caelid for some reason. I don't know what to make of that, though. Like, quite possibly that would mean, like, maybe a landmass fell down below or something. Who knows?
Band
But we see what's either rays of light or veil.
together and prepare to claim.
This is very Dark Souls, by the way.
The life.
And it's possible that this is the part where it starts bridging the gaps. But as you can see, they do talk about the Night Lord, which would mean we did the Ronnie ending. But kind of looking at this, I realized some of that weird material that's built up on some of these places here looks a lot like this kind of. I just don't know what to make of it. But it also reminds me of that Divine Gate area in the DLC. How like the life around it like petrified to like ash or something. I think it could be like something a little similar. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what comes up about that. But I wonder if this could be anything like that door in Lost Izalith by like the centipede demon. In which case, imagine just opening this up and the first thing you see is the centipede demon. But I'd imagine this is like where you come from to go back or whatever from wherever Ranni takes you from.
Of the Night Lord.
But the fact that it is called Nightreign would suggest that the focus is basically that path of Ranni's ending. Which would suggest that's probably like the canon one. So overall, I'm very curious, and I'm super excited to see what that's about. Otherwise, 2025, I don't know what that's supposed to be in the sky exactly, but it's possible it's supposed to represent like Ghost Flame or whatever. But it's clear some of the other inspiration in this artwork is of the Ghost Flame variety. Like this right here alone reminds me of a death bird. And otherwise, this looks like Stormvale Castle in the distance. I am curious how much actual structures from the Lands Between make it there or not. But we do see some of those colossal shadows in the distance. Like one there and one like right there. But I hope this was a fun enough and engaging sort of perspective of a breakdown on this overall. Thank you so much for watching, if you indeed have. And thank you for joining me on this slight bit of a journey of my unhinged searches just becoming a reality. And you have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.